FedExCup elimination pressure is not just a late-season story anymore. Players are starting to point at Brian Rolapp, and that name is now sitting in the middle of every bubble conversation. This is not about one bad round or one missed putt. It is about a tour where every spot suddenly carries more weight, and every points board feels more personal. Fans hear the word bubble and think about playoff chances. Players hear the same word and think about status, income, schedule access, and the next version of their careers. That difference is where this story starts. The frustration is not loud yet, but it is spreading through the tour. What makes this dangerous is simple. The PGA Tour is changing, and the people closest to the edge are the ones who feel it first. A good week can still change a season. A bad week can now raise much bigger questions. That is why Rolapp's name keeps coming up in player conversations, sponsor talks, and media debate. This is not a story about one quote or one press conference. It is about the quiet math that players are doing in their heads after every round. They are looking at the FedExCup board, then looking at the tour's future, and wondering if the rules are changing while they play. That uncertainty can change decisions, schedules, and even careers. The safe players can watch from a distance. The players near the edge cannot. We will unpack this step by step. Who is involved, which rules matter, why Rolapp is being blamed, and how this pressure grew so fast. The full answer is coming, and it is bigger than one playoff week. My take, Rolapp's direction looks strong for the top, risky for the rest. Agree? Subscribe so you don't miss the next twist this week. That edge is exactly why Rolapp's name keeps surfacing. He is not being blamed for one quote, one schedule tweak, or one missed cut. His name is tied to a bigger feeling on tour, the sense that the next era is still being defined, and not everyone knows where they fit. Players are not saying all of this publicly yet. The frustration is showing in smaller ways. Schedule choices, private comments, agent calls, and the way people talk about the FedExCup when cameras are off. Some players are comfortable because their status is secure. Others are watching every point because they know how fast a season can turn. The result is a simple question that will not go away. Who is protected and who is exposed? That worry may look quiet from outside. Inside the tour, it is spreading fast. That exposure is what gives the FedExCup board its new weight. Fans see names, points, and projection lines. Players see consequences. A ranking is not just a ranking anymore. It is entry, income, and a measure of trust in the tour's next plan. The bubble is not one line. It is a set of gates. One gate decides who stays in the first playoff event. Another decides who keeps the season alive a little longer. The last gate decides who plays for the biggest reward. Each gate changes the meaning of a season. A player inside the line can breathe for a few days. A player outside the line starts checking other players' results before he checks his own score. He needs help. He needs math to work. He needs a good round at the right time. That is not confidence. That is survival mode. This is why every Thursday tee time feels heavier during this stretch. A normal missed cut can become a chain reaction. A normal bad round can change a schedule. A normal slump can start raising questions about next year. The board does not shout. It only counts. Numbers on a screen rarely tell the whole story. This time, they reveal fear. That fear is why Rory McIlroy's name matters here. Rory is not fighting for his card. He is not living week to week on the bubble. He is one of the biggest names the tour can put in front of a crowd. That is why his actions carry extra weight. When Rory skipped the first FedExCup playoff event, people noticed. When he defended that choice, they noticed even more. He has said he wants to play on his own terms. For a fan, that sounds like independence. For the tour, it raises a harder question about whether the playoff product has full belief from its biggest stars. This is not about one player wanting a rest. The issue is trust. If the strongest names treat a playoff event as optional, the event looks weaker. If the event looks weaker, the bubble players suffer more because they are asked to carry the pressure alone. Golf media called Rory's absence a warning sign for Brian Rolapp's direction. That label stuck because it was simple. Rory did not need to say much. His schedule said enough. The message was not loud, but it was clear enough for the player group to hear. Rory's choice was not about rest. It was a message. The message was simple. A schedule cannot demand loyalty if the structure does not earn trust. Rory has enough security to make a stand. Most players do not. That gap is now part of the story. When a star skips, the tour may bend. When a bubble player skips, he risks falling out of sight. That double standard is not always spoken, but players see it. They see who gets flexibility and who gets consequences. They see whose name is protected and whose ranking is exposed. This is where the frustration deepens. Rory's choice brought attention to the problem, but it did not create the whole issue. The format itself is under question. A playoff system needs clarity. It needs stakes that feel real. It needs the best players to treat it as something worth defending. If that belief weakens, the damage spreads downward. Top players can absorb criticism. Middle players cannot. Bubble players have the least protection, so they feel every doubt more sharply. They are not just playing for a win, they are playing for a future. That pattern matters because it changes how events are viewed. One absence can be managed. Repeated absences weaken authority. Players watch closely because authority affects rules and point value. One skipped event can be ignored. A pattern cannot. That pattern became harder to ignore when Scottie Scheffler spoke. Scottie is not a bubble player. He is not chasing basic security. He is the standard. When the best player questions a format, the tour cannot treat it as noise. Scottie called the FedExCup playoff format silly. That word landed because it was blunt. It did not sound like media drama. It sounded like a player saying the system does not fully make sense. For a format built on drama and stakes, that criticism is damaging. The issue is not that Scottie wants a simpler path. The issue is that clarity matters. Players need to know what they are chasing. Fans need to know why a week matters. Sponsors need to know the product is stable. When the best player calls the format silly, all three groups hear the same warning. This is why Scottie's comment hurt more than a normal quote. It did not come from a player trying to excuse a bad week. It came from a player who should benefit most from the current setup. That makes the criticism harder to dismiss. Scottie's words were short. Their meaning was not. That weakness is felt most by players near the cutoff. They do not have lifetime exemptions. They do not have huge guaranteed deals waiting no matter what happens. They play for position every week. For them, the FedExCup is not a narrative. It is a livelihood. These players are not unknown to the tour. They are the golfers who make the system work. They fill fields. They chase points. They give the leaderboard depth. Their names may not sell tickets everywhere, but their results decide whether the season feels meaningful. This is where the pressure becomes personal. A top player can miss a cut and still plan the next major. A bubble player can miss one cut and lose entry into events that could save his season. The difference is not small. It is the difference between control and panic. Fans sometimes miss this part. They see a player near the bubble and think he should just play better. That is too simple. These players are already good enough to be here. The question is whether the structure gives them enough room to stay. When the tour talks about smaller fields and bigger stages, they hear a warning. They hear that the middle may shrink. A top player can criticize a format. A bubble player has to survive it. Survival is where names like Max Greyserman and Michael Kim enter the picture. They are useful examples because their names have appeared in FedExCup bubble coverage. They are not the tour's biggest faces, but their situations explain the stakes better than a generic explanation. A player like Greyserman can play well for weeks and still feel unsafe because the math is tight. A good finish can lift him into position. A missed cut can drop him back into danger. That swing changes how a player plans, practices, and even thinks about rest. Michael Kim shows the same pressure from another angle. He knows that a season can turn on small margins. A shot that finds a bunker instead of a fairway can alter a points projection. A Sunday charge from another player can erase his own good work. That is the reality of bubble golf. These players are not asking for sympathy. They are asking for a system that still rewards consistency. They want to believe that a full season of work can matter. If the structure keeps moving, their effort feels less secure. That is why the conversation keeps returning to Rolapp. That warning is easy to ignore, but it shapes quiet choices over months. Those two names are not headline stars. Their bubble math is a warning. The warning is not about two players. It is about the middle of the tour. Top stars have options. Bottom players know the grind is brutal. The middle class is where the fear is sharpest, because those players are close enough to safety to taste it and close enough to danger to lose it fast. That fear changes decisions. A player may enter an event that does not suit his game because he needs points. He may delay rest because the calendar is unforgiving. He may push through pain because one skipped week could cost him a playoff spot. These are not small choices. They shape a season. This is also where the tour's language matters. Words like bigger, exclusive, smaller, and tighter sound good in a boardroom. They sound different in a player meeting. Players hear those words and wonder whether the future will protect effort or only reward star power. Rolapp may not intend to make the middle feel expendable, but intent is not what matters most. Perception matters. If players believe the structure is closing around them, they will react. Some will speak. Some will plan exits. Some will simply play with more fear. Missing one cut is a bad week. Missing several becomes a career problem. That career problem is why Rolapp remains at the center of the debate. He is not being blamed for one bad tournament. He is being blamed for a direction. The tour wants fewer chances, stronger stages, and more value at the top. That may help the product look cleaner. It also makes the climb harder for everyone else. Players can accept difficulty. They cannot accept uncertainty. The talk of a future two-level structure has made the current season feel like a test they did not study for. They are playing now, but they are also trying to guess which rules will matter later. That is a heavy mental load during a season that already demands focus. This is where the emotional case becomes clear. The FedExCup was supposed to give the season a strong finish. Instead, many players feel it has become a series of cliffs. One miss can shrink a year. One cold stretch can erase momentum. One rule change can alter the value of past results. That is why the frustration is not fading. It is tied to careers, not headlines. Players want to know the tour still values the middle. They want to know the system will not reward only the strongest names while leaving everyone else to fight for entry. That direction now touches every part of the season, from schedule choices to sponsor interest. The longer the uncertainty lasts, the more every standings update feels like a verdict. Players do not need a formal announcement to sense that the ground is moving. That feeling changes preparation. It also changes patience. Players notice, sponsors notice, and the calendar waits too. It shows. Blame is not landing on Rolapp because of one quote. It is landing because of a direction. Now the full picture is clear. The players involved are not one type. Rory McIlroy is the warning sign from the top, because his skipped playoff event showed that even the biggest star does not fully trust the path. Scottie Scheffler is the format critic, because his blunt comment exposed doubt from the best player in the game. Bubble players like Max Greyserman and Michael Kim are the human cost, because their seasons can turn on one number. The which is the FedExCup gate system. Top 70 gets players into the first playoff event. Top 50 keeps the season alive into the second event. Top 30 decides who reaches the Tour Championship and the biggest rewards. Around those cutoffs sits a bigger issue: tighter entry rules, smaller fields, and a future structure that may leave fewer players safe. The why is direct. Rolapp's direction puts more value inside the cutoffs and more danger outside them. The how is also clear. The pressure exploded because playoff elimination met fewer chances, star doubt, format criticism, and bubble fear at the same time. That is the full reason players are blaming him. That answer does not end the story. It raises the next one. A tour can manage criticism for a week. It struggles when the competitive path feels unstable. Pressure like this does not appear by accident. It is built. That buildup is now visible in 4 places: sponsors, fans, fall events, and player planning. Sponsors do not only buy logo space, they buy certainty. They want players available, storylines clear, and weeks that feel important. When the playoff path feels disputed, sponsors start asking questions. They may not say those questions publicly. They ask them in renewal talks. They ask them when deciding whether to activate around an event or treat it as just another week. A sponsor can live with one strange season. It is harder to live with a system that feels unsettled year after year. Golf is expensive to promote. Hospitality, media, travel, and local engagement all depend on the field feeling strong. If players near the bubble feel squeezed, the field can look weaker. If the field looks weaker, the commercial value drops. That is not drama. That is basic sports business. Sponsors rarely complain loudly. They simply adjust their numbers. Fans are the second signal. Golf fans are patient, but they are not blind. They can follow points if the stakes are clear. They can care about a bubble if the rules feel consistent. What they cannot follow is a structure that seems to change while the season is being played. When fans stop trusting the standings, they stop investing emotionally. They may still watch the majors, but the regular season loses weight. This matters because the FedExCup is supposed to give meaning to weeks outside the majors. It is supposed to make ordinary events feel connected. If fans see the playoffs as a corporate exercise, the tour loses a valuable layer of interest. The broadcast partners need that interest too. Television does not only need golf, it needs narrative. It needs names moving up, players fighting, and clear stakes on Sunday. Fans can forgive a weak week. They rarely forgive a confusing one. The fall schedule is the third place this pressure shows up. In the past, fall events were often treated as chances to reset, regain status, or build momentum. Under a tighter model, those weeks can feel more urgent. Players outside the playoff line may need fall results just to secure entry for the next cycle. That changes the purpose of the fall. It becomes less about development and more about survival. Young players feel this the most. They do not have multi-year security. They need every start to count. If access shrinks, their road gets harder. The tour may gain a sharper top product, but it risks narrowing the path for the next wave. That is dangerous long-term because every star starts as a player trying to get in. If the entry route feels unstable, the tour can lose depth before fans even notice. This is also where the Korn Ferry Tour conversation enters the picture. The developmental circuit is supposed to feed talent upward. If the PGA Tour tightens too much, the value of moving up can become unclear. Players still want to reach the top, of course, but they also need to know that reaching it gives them a fair chance to stay. Without that belief, the ladder feels fragile. Fall events may look small on paper. They often decide big careers. Player planning is the fourth signal. Agents, coaches, and caddies now have to think beyond form. They have to think about entry windows, points protection, and schedule risk. A player no longer asks only where he can play well. He asks where he can survive. That is a different mindset. It can protect a career, but it can also make golf feel more defensive. Some players may chase safe starts instead of events that fit their game. Some may avoid travel that could help their long-term development. Others may push through injury because they cannot afford to miss a point-paying week. These choices rarely show up in press conferences. They show up in performance, fatigue, and confidence. That is where the cost becomes real. This also affects the way fans discuss the season. Social media has made every projection public. A player can see his name on the bubble list while eating breakfast. That constant visibility adds pressure even when the player says he is fine. The modern tour is not only played on grass, it is also tracked on screens, and those screens never rest. Clarity is the only way out of this. Players do not need every detail made public every week. They need a stable frame. They need to know that the cutoffs mean what they say. They need to know the tour is not going to shift the value of their season after the fact. If Rolapp can provide that frame, the pressure can become productive. If he cannot, the same pressure will keep creating doubt. That is why the next statement from the tour matters. A vague answer will not settle this. A defensive answer may make it worse. Players are looking for evidence, not slogans. They want schedule logic, entry fairness, and a future that still rewards the middle. The tour can still win this argument, but only if it treats the concern as real. Clarity can calm a room. Silence leaves space for suspicion. The tour now faces a simple test. If the FedExCup feels fair, players will accept pressure. If it feels tilted, pressure becomes resentment. Sponsors watch this. Fans feel it too. A playoff system only works when people believe the stakes are real and earned. Rolapp still has room to fix this. He can explain the future more clearly. He can protect the middle while still building bigger stages. He can make the cutoffs feel firm without making them feel cruel. The players are not asking for comfort. They are asking for a path that respects work. If the tour ignores the warning signs, the story will grow. Top players may keep skipping events. Bubble players may keep speaking through agents and off-camera comments. Fans may stop caring about points if the system feels planned instead of earned. That is the real risk. The FedExCup should not become a math problem that players fear more than fans enjoy. Golf needs tension, but it also needs trust. The next few weeks will show whether the tour understands that balance. The bubble will reveal more than a playoff field. It will reveal whether the next era is being built with the players or around them. Trust can survive one mistake. It cannot survive repeated doubt. The players will remember how this season is handled. The tour will remember how quickly belief can slip. That is the difference between a strong finish and a long, quiet problem. August will answer the question. If the tour listens, the pressure can become purpose. If it does not, the bubble will keep growing louder every year, and the next season may start with doubt already built in. The final test will show up in entries, not speeches. If the best players keep treating playoff weeks as optional, the product weakens. If bubble players keep fearing one bad month, the system loses trust. Rolapp can still steer this toward clarity. He needs to show that the tour values more than its top layer. Golf grows when the path is hard but fair. The next FedExCup stretch will prove whether this era rewards work or simply protects power. Players are watching closely. Fans should too. That answer will echo through every ranking conversation too.